West Texas, 1850. As the afternoon sun beats down upon them, legendary Texas Ranger Bigfoot Wallace and a number of inexperienced Texian gunmen lie motionless on the dusty, rocky ground, doing their best not to move a muscle. Only minutes earlier, they had been enjoying a midday break from their arduous journey from San Antonio to El Paso when they had been attacked by a roving band of 27 Comanche warriors. A short fight, lasting only a few minutes, had unfolded between the Texians and the Comanche, only to see the Comanche disappear over a nearby ridgeline. But Bigfoot Wallace knows that this fight has just begun. Suddenly, they see the figures of several Comanche warriors in the brush roughly 75 yards away. The warriors move cautiously, looking directly towards them, but they cannot see the Texians in the thick brush. Believing their enemy to have left the battlefield, the warriors begin to cautiously make their way towards the Texians' wagon. Wallace can hear the younger men with him begin to stir. These Comanche warriors present an easy target, and after the fight they have just endured, the more inexperienced among them are eager to take down any Comanche that they can. But Wallace orders them to hold their fire. He knows that this warrior is very likely not alone. Several minutes drag by, with every passing second increasing the young Texians' desire to pull their triggers. In spite of this, each one of them dutifully follows Wallace's orders. But the veteran ranger's next order gives them all pause. "Now, boys," whispers the hulking 6'2", 240-pound Wallace, "run down and tumble under the wagon like you were nearly scared to death." The younger men hesitate, but only for a moment. Wallace has been here many times before, they all reckon, and following his lead is undoubtedly their best chance at surviving this fight. And so, they light out for the wagon, all of them, including Wallace, wailing and moaning all the way, fully committing to the role of fleeing, frightened opponents. As they all slide under the wagon, the Comanche erupt in a roar of insults and chiding laughter, calling the Texians cowards and squaws. Disgusted with his enemy's actions, the Comanche chief tells his warriors that they now have free rein to attack the cowering Texans at their leisure. Soon after, a volley of arrows slams into the wagon, with several of them embedding themselves into the vehicle and others sticking into the ground, just missing their targets. The nerves of the younger Texians under the wagon now, understandably, begin to rattle, but Wallace remains unmoved. Suddenly, a Comanche bullet slams into the metal ring that surrounds the wagon wheel, known as the tire, splitting the tire and ricocheting into the upper chest of Texian Adolph Fry. But the wound is not serious, and the Texians continue to hold their ground. Though the fight is rapidly escalating, all among them continue to trust that if they are going to be caught in a Comanche ambush, Bigfoot Wallace is the man they want to be trapped with. Wallace, born William Alexander Anderson Wallace in Lexington, Virginia, is 33 years old and already a legend on the Texas frontier. He hails from the proud Scottish lineage of the legendary William Wallace and has thus far held true to his family's reputation as stalwart warriors and irascible individualists. He had come to Texas in 1837 at the age of 20 and immediately became deeply enamored with the adventure and the danger that the new republic had to offer. Within months of his arrival, Wallace was involved in a gunfight with native warriors, and soon after this, he had been captured by an unknown tribe, generally believed to be the Lipan Apache, while out hunting on his farm near LaGrange, Texas. He was held for a number of months, living with the tribe, before finally being returned to LaGrange. He then visited the ruins of the Alamo, only a few years old by the time Wallace laid eyes on them. Soon after, while living in Austin, Wallace was given the name of Bigfoot by some of the local citizenry. The accounts of exactly how he got this name vary. Some sources say it was because he had shot and killed a feared local chief named Bigfoot. Others said that it was his hulking size and literal big feet that earned him the moniker. In either case, the name stuck. Bigfoot Wallace would continue on over the subsequent 13 years to to play a part in countless episodes of Texas frontier history. He would take part in what would become the Mexican-American War, fighting in several legendary engagements including the Battle of Salado, the Battle of Hondo River, and the Battle of Mier, where he and 241 other Texians would be captured by General Pedro de Ampudia. Wallace and the other Texians were taken first to the city of Saltillo in the state of Coahuila, Mexico, before being marched to the city of Salado. Shortly after being captured, 181 of the Texian prisoners had attempted to escape, but Wallace and all but 5 other prisoners had been recaptured after suffering greatly in the northern Mexico deserts, and then summarily marched back to Saltillo in irons. Here, the embarrassed and infuriated General Santa Anna had ordered that a rare form of military punishment, one whose roots harkened back to the Roman Empire, be meted out upon the escapees. He ordered the execution of every 10th man among the Texians, a practice known amongst the Romans as decimation. To decide who amongst them would live and who would die, the prisoners would be forced to draw lots by reaching into a clay jar filled with 159 white beans and 17 black beans. Those who drew the white bean would be left alive in order to continue out their captivity under the Mexican army. Those who drew a black bean were to be immediately executed by firing squad. Wallace would be fortunate enough to draw a white bean and ultimately survive this harrowing ordeal. However, many of these men, Wallace included, would soon question their luck as they were marched to the city of Perote and locked inside the walls of the notorious Perote prison. Here, the cramped, filthy conditions spread sickness rapidly amongst the men, seeing 40 of them quickly succumb to various infectious diseases. It was said that here Wallace had, quote, went wild and had to be tied down. The imposing Texan had descended so far into a temporary madness that local villagers would come to view him as if he was part of some traveling sideshow. One account of this time recalls 2 daughters of wealthy local politicians being allowed into his room in order to view his condition up close. The women had heard the stories circulating about town of, quote, El Grande Americano Loco, as Wallace had come to be known, the prisoner who was so crazed that he destroyed any room he was kept in. What they found instead was a huddled, muttering shell of a man, with a bedsheet wrapped around his head and shoulders as if shielding his face. It would be nearly 2 weeks before he had recovered enough to work on the chain gangs again. Wallace's confinement at Perote prison would last a total of 22 months until he was released on the 5th of August, 1844. From here, he had made his way to Veracruz and then to New Orleans. Soon after, Wallace had made his way back to Texas, where he spent the rest of the decade serving as a Texas Ranger, fighting against the Comanche and his most hated foe, the Mexican army. By 1850, he had signed on with the mail train service operating between San Antonio and El Paso. Now, as he and his cohorts huddle under their mail wagon, weathering a deluge of Comanche arrows, Wallace knows that he will likely be the defining factor in his younger companion's survival. As Adolph Fry now writhes in pain from his newly incurred chest wound, Wallace does his best to eye the nearby hilltop. For too long now, none of the Comanche warriors have shown themselves. Minutes drag by, as no more war whoops are heard and no more arrows fall. Finally, though, 5 Comanche appear at the crest of the hill, cautiously moving towards the mail train, assuming the Texians to have all been killed. As his companions begin to stir excitedly, Wallace again calmly and quietly orders them to hold their fire. He waits until the Comanche are yards away from the mail train before ordering his men to open fire. "Now, men," Wallace commands, "every man for his Indian. Take good aim and fire." With this, the Texians unleash a ferocious volley from underneath the wagon. Instantly, the Comanche leading the group of warriors tumbles from his horse, slamming into the hard ground. Another of the warriors also falls from his horse with a sickening thud, quickly succumbing to his wounds. The Comanche flee back over the ridge and out of sight, as Wallace and his men hurriedly reload and then nervously refocus their attention to the ridgeline, anticipating another attack to come at any second. But after several minutes, no Comanche appear. It seems, for now, they have left the battlefield. However, Wallace again sternly commands his men not to leave the cover of the wagon. He tells them that, though the Comanche have likely given up the fight, they will not leave their dead comrades here. In the previous decade, the Texians themselves had made it a regular practice to scalp and otherwise mutilate any dead Comanche left behind. This was also the case in the intertribal warfare the Comanches often found themselves engaged in with the Tonkawa and the Apache. To combat this, the Comanche have taken to removing their dead warriors from the battlefield by any means necessary. Within a few more minutes, the Texians see just how committed the Comanche are to retrieving their fellow tribesmen. The loops of Comanche rawhide ropes can soon be seen sailing over the ridgeline in attempts to rope their dead comrades and bring them back to their lines to be taken home for a proper burial. The men underneath the wagon cannot see the warriors behind the ridgeline, and thus they cannot gain a clear line of fire with which to take a shot. They can only watch as the Comanche make attempt after attempt at throwing their loops and catching the limbs of their dead warriors. But finally, after countless tries, they succeed in retrieving both of their comrades and then spiriting away to the northwest and to the safety of the open plains. Now, Wallace and his men hurriedly regroup and make their way back to the nearest U.S. Army fort, Fort Clark, about 40 miles west of the town of Uvalde. Wallace, knowing that they will almost certainly be attacked again if they simply carry on, now intends to procure a military escort for the remainder of their trip back to San Antonio. But at Fort Clark, he is told that they cannot spare any men to accompany him and that he will have to carry on further west to Fort Inge, about 4 miles south of Uvalde, and there make another request. Wallace and his men make the treacherous journey, some 35 miles, before arriving at Fort Inge and again being informed that they will not be granted a military escort. The commanding officer of Fort Inge tells Wallace that he cannot send his men with him to San Antonio because he fears a large number of them might desert. Disgusted, Wallace pens a scathing letter to U.S. Army headquarters in San Antonio, denouncing the officer's dismissiveness and decrying the slovenly nature of the troops. Then, he and his men travel the 4 miles north to Uvalde, where Wallace hires his own security contingent with money from his own pocket. He and his men then make the 85-mile trip east to San Antonio, where they arrive with their wagons still full of Comanche arrows. Here, they are met by General Kirby Smith, commander of the U.S. Army forces in San Antonio. The general has received Wallace's letter shortly before Wallace's actual arrival, and he resolutely informs Wallace that the men at Fort Inge will be soundly disciplined for their lack of resolve, as will their commanding officer. The general sends word that the soldiers at Fort Inge are to be sent on a long scouting mission, over 100 miles round trip through the West Texas desert. Wallace and his men would go on to finish their trip to El Paso and then back to San Antonio, where Wallace would go on to continue his service with the mail train and intermittently as a Texas Ranger. He would eventually outlive the vast majority of his Ranger companions, passing away at the age of 81 in 1899. But this story of Wallace's encounter with the Comanche in the wilds of West Texas is but one short story from his expansive life. A life full of adventure, hardship, violence, and loyalty to his beloved state of Texas. However, for tonight, those are other stories for other times.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of History at the OK Corral. Be sure to click the like button, share this episode with a friend, and become a subscriber. Also, if you'd like to support our work and gain early access to episodes as well as ad-free viewing and all that good stuff, you can become a member of this channel by clicking on the subscribe button down below. Also, down below, you will find links to our TikTok, our Instagram, and our daily newsletter. Subscribe to any of them or all of them. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time on History at the OK Corral, home of history's greatest shootouts and showdowns.